Hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan, and this is Recurring Insight. For this episode, I'm going to be talking about Knight of the Ebon Legion, which is one of my favorite designs of the last few years. Hi, I'm Patrick Sullivan, and this is Recurring Insight. For this episode, I'm going to talk about Knight of the Ebon Legion. I think there's been a few designs over the last couple of years that have been sort of panned by the community for play pattern or rate, and not without cause. So for the next couple episodes, I want to highlight some of my favorite designs of the last couple of years, and this one is near the top of the list.
Whenever possible, I'm a big fan of trying to flatten out the rate on a card, by which I mean make it good early, medium, and late. Not just lean into one axis or another, but that's a really hard thing to do on one mana creatures. If they're beatdown creatures like Goblin Guide, that's going to lean really heavily towards being in your opening hand, and if they're mana accelerators like Birds of Paradise or Land of War Elves, it's going to play that way too. Knight of the Ebon Legion does a very good job of sort of splitting the difference between how good it is on turn one and how good it is later on in the game. It's a 1-mana creature, so you do want it in your opening hand, but on the second turn of the game, it's just a 1/2 attacker. It's only on turn 3 and beyond where you start getting paid out. And because it's a mana sink, and because the trigger can have sort of pseudo haste if your battlefield is already developed, for a 1-mana creature, it's a pretty reasonable draw on turn 4 or 5. So it does a really nice job of sort of smoothing out the variance there, which is a very challenging thing for 1-mana creatures to do. Also, the incentive structure on the card is very interesting, because it has a fairly expensive activated power, but also asks you to deal 4 points of damage. So one way of engaging with that sort of problem is to say, well, I'm going to load up on a bunch of 1-mana creatures and really lean into the activated power. And the other way of doing it is, well, I'm going to play with some larger creatures, so anything that I play with is capable of fulfilling the 4 damage requirement. And the reality is, in Constructed at least, you often do a little bit of both. If you look at Pioneer deck lists, they're saturated with the other good 1-drops and 2-drops in black, along with threats like Rankle, Master of Pranks, and Spawn of Mayhem that are capable of triggering the ability by itself. Lastly, I'm a big fan of cards that have advantages that accumulate over time that can be toppled if your opponent draws the right card. A problem with, let's say, Dark Confidant is, if it's on the battlefield for a couple of turns, and then your opponent draws a removal spell, the game is not really that interesting to play in its aftermath a lot of the time. You are going to get buried by the extra cards your opponent has drawn most of the time. But Knight of the Ebon Legion, even though it's accumulating this advantage, and even though sometimes it's dealing a lot of damage, if your opponent draws a removal spell, they get out from under the whole thing, because the only thing it's doing is growing itself over time. So in terms of flattening out the variance and flattening out the distribution of rate, which is so challenging to do on 1-mana creatures, in terms of incentivizing a wide array of different threats to go alongside with it, and in terms of accumulating advantages that make the card feel more powerful and more exciting to have over an extended period of time without accruing an advantage that your opponent can't get out from under, Knight of the Ebon Legion is one of the more interesting and compelling and well-executed 1-mana creatures in Magic's history.
So that was Knight of the Ebon Legion, and this is Recurring Insight. A couple things you can do from here: make sure that you're subscribed to the Starseed Games YouTube page, throw a like or a comment up there as well. I'm at the point now where I'm almost through sort of the list of designs that I have in the hopper to do. So if you want to leave a request in the comments page for the next one, that'd be really great. And stay tuned next time. The next episode is going to be literally my favorite design of the last couple of years, so I'm looking forward to it.